Hello and welcome to Byju's IAS. Let's take up the analysis of today's The Hindu newspaper, beginning with a discussion on the India-Russia relationship. Today, The Hindu carries multiple articles related to India-Russia relations as a result of the 21st India-Russia Annual Summit, which was held yesterday following the visit of Russian President Vladimir Putin to India. This is the second visit to India by Putin in the last 1.5 to 2 years, despite the pandemic. And it goes on to show the significance that the two countries attach to their bilateral relationship. During this interaction, the two leaders have exchanged their views on global and regional geopolitics and have highlighted the priorities for the India Russia relationship. The key development during the annual summit was that the two countries have held their first ever 2+2 ministerial dialogue and have even signed around 28 agreements spanning across several strategic sectors, including defense, military and technical cooperation, hydrocarbons, etc. See, a 2+2 ministerial dialogue involves a meeting between the defense ministers and foreign ministers of the two countries. Such a dialogue format provides an opportunity to the two countries to discuss their common geopolitical and security concerns and to further take forward their strategic partnership. India already holds such a 2+2 ministerial dialogue with key strategic partners such as the United States, Japan, and Australia. Now, with Russia as well, India has established the 2+2 ministerial format, and the first ever 2+2 ministerial dialogue has taken place yesterday. Following the interaction between Prime Minister Modi and President Putin, the defense and foreign ministers of the two countries met, and they have highlighted the common geopolitical and security concerns of the two countries. This includes the threat posed by organized crime, especially drug trafficking, and the continued threat posed by terrorist outfits, especially state sponsored terror groups. They have even exchanged their views on the current situation in Afghanistan, as both Russia and India happen to be key players in Afghanistan. The two sides have also highlighted that the pandemic has created several challenges, including economic destabilization, which in turn could give rise to security challenges that could lead to destabilization of the region and the world. Then India in particular has brought up its concerns about the ongoing militarization in the region and the arms race that has been triggered by China and Pakistan, and how it threatens regional and global stability. The two sides have also referred to the ongoing over centralization of global geopolitics, which is essentially a reference to the domination of geopolitics by US and China, and how their ongoing geopolitical rivalry affects other countries like India and Russia. Hence, both India and Russia have sought to deepen regional trust amongst key countries and to work towards boosting global security by promoting a multipolar world order. In this regard, India has sought greater engagement in the Central Asia region with the help of Russia, and parallelly, Russia seeks to play a greater role in the Indian Ocean region with the help of India. So, as Afghanistan and the region around it faces greater destabilization, and as the geopolitical rivalry between US and China intensifies, and as these two global powers seek to dominate global geopolitics, India and Russia are looking to counter this over centralization and to provide for stability in the region and beyond by working towards establishing a multipolar world order. So, this would require the greater engagement of major powers like Russia in the Indian Ocean, and it would also require key powers like India to play a greater role in the Central Asia region. So, the two countries are looking to take forward their strategic partnership in such key areas. Then, apart from that, during the 2+2 ministerial dialogue, India has highlighted the unprovoked aggression that it has been subjected to along its northern borders over the last 1.5 years. This was India's indirect reference to China's military aggression that we have seen along the India China border since last year. So, keeping all these common concerns in mind, India has called upon Russia to further strengthen their military and technical cooperation, which was put in place several years ago to assist India's military modernization. The military and technical cooperation between India and Russia is led by the India Russia Intergovernmental Commission on Military and Military Technical Cooperation. The 20th meeting of this Intergovernmental Commission has taken place, and the two countries have signed several agreements, contracts, and protocols. This includes an agreement for the manufacture of AK-203 assault rifles, under which India is looking to indigenously produce around 6.1 lakh AK-203 assault rifles for its armed forces and security forces. And this project would be taken up as a joint venture by the Indo-Russia Rifles Private Limited, which has been established at Amethi in Uttar Pradesh. This production facility is a joint venture between India's erstwhile Ordnance Factory Board and other concerned Russian companies. So Russia would be transferring the technology to produce the AK-203 assault rifles, and they would be produced in India to meet the requirement of the Indian Armed Forces and Security Forces. The two sides have also signed a logistics exchange agreement known as RELOS, or the Reciprocal Exchange of Logistics Agreement. This will allow the armed forces of the two countries to exchange logistical support to each other and to provide access to each other's military facilities in order to boost interoperability and joint operations between the two sides. Then India and Russia have also signed a MOU on Navy to Navy cooperation, as both the countries are looking to play a greater role in the Indo-Pacific region. Then finally, Russia has begun delivering the critical S-400 missiles to India, which was under the threat of American sanctions. See, the S-400 Triumph missile is a long-range air defense missile system, and India had signed a deal with Russia to procure this critical weapon in order to strengthen its air defenses primarily against China. But this deal between India and Russia had run into trouble because of the CATSA law of the United States. CATSA stands for Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act, and this law of the US has declared three countries as the adversary states of the US. This includes Russia, Iran, and North Korea. While these three countries have been placed under primary sanctions by the US, any other country which trades with these countries in key domains like defense and energy, even they face the risk of inviting secondary sanctions by the US. So when India signed the S-400 deal with Russia, US had threatened India with secondary sanctions. And in fact, the US has already imposed such secondary sanctions on Turkey, which has also procured the S-400 missiles from Russia. But despite the threat of American sanctions, India-Russia decided to ignore the American threat, and they have proceeded with the deal, and Russia has already begun the delivery of S-400 missiles into India. So in total, India and Russia have signed around 28 key agreements spanning across defense, hydrocarbons, and military and technical cooperation during the 21st annual summit. So this interaction between India and Russia clearly shows the special relationship that is shared between the two countries. So to mark this special relationship, the Hindu carries a column on page number 6, in which the writer is of the opinion that the India-Russia relationship is a time-tested relationship. In fact, a similar opinion was expressed yesterday by Prime Minister Modi during the annual summit. Prime Minister Modi has observed that while the world and the global geopolitics has changed over the several years, the India-Russia relationship has largely remained unchanged, and in fact, it has gained strength over the years as both the countries have been consistently paying special attention to each other's mutual concerns. See, over the last 70 odd years, global geopolitics has seen a lot of changes, and even the national interests of India and Russia have changed over a period of time. But despite these changing national interests of the two countries, and despite the constant changes in global geopolitics, the India-Russia relationship has remained a constant as both the countries have always paid special attention to each other. If you go all the way back to 1947 and witness how the India-Russia relations have evolved, you will notice that with each passing decade, the relations have become stronger as the two countries have managed to build a great amount of trust between themselves. This key bilateral relationship was built on a very strong foundation during the Cold War era. After India became independent, for the first couple of decades, Russia maintained very cordial relations with India and used to consistently extend support to India, be it over the Kashmir dispute with Pakistan and the subsequent wars that India fought with Pakistan over the issue. Even during the 1962 India China conflict, the then Soviet Union took a neutral position despite sharing very close relations with China. From the 1960s itself, the Soviet Union started emerging as a key defense partner for India by supplying the much needed MiG fighter aircrafts for the Indian Air Force. Then in 1970s, during the heights of the Cold War, came a true test for the India-Soviet Union relationship. In 1971, as war had broken out between India and Pakistan, and as India was playing a direct role in the liberation of Bangladesh, India had to deal with a hostile United States which had aligned itself with Pakistan. So, to counter the American threat, India signed a key agreement with the Soviet Union, known as the Treaty of Peace and Friendship of 1971, under which the Soviet Union committed to come to India's assistance if it were to be threatened by the United States. Throughout the war, the Soviet Union also extended complete diplomatic support to India's efforts in East Pakistan, and it played a key role in India's victory against Pakistan. Until 1971, India had firmly remained committed to the principles of the non aligned movement, and it had not chosen sides between the two superpowers, that is, the United States and the Soviet Union, which were facing off each other during the Cold War. But the developments during the 1971 war forced India to abandon the principles of non alignment, and following the signing of the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, India clearly aligned with the Soviet power bloc. This led the bilateral relationship to flourish for the next couple of decades, and very quickly the Soviet Union became a key defense and military partner for India. Throughout the period, the Soviet Union remained the largest supplier of military hardware to the Indian armed forces and provided critical military equipment to the Indian forces, including advanced fighter jets, battle tanks and missiles, and as well as navy ships and other ammunition and armament. Then, even after the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, and as the Cold War came to an end, India continued this special strategic relationship with the successor state to the Soviet Union, that is Russia. Since 91, India and Russia have further expanded their relationship, and in 2000, they even elevated the relationship to a strategic partnership. Then in 2010, following a historic visit of President Putin to India, the two countries further elevated the strategic partnership to a special and privileged strategic partnership. Today, this is reflected in the close political and strategic relations between the two countries, where the two countries maintain close political contact through frequent engagement between the two governments. They collaborate and cooperate on most of the important global geopolitical issues, and Russia's assistance to India in the defense and military domain has only expanded over the last 2 to 3 decades. It has supplied India with advanced military hardware such as the Sukhoi 30 fighter jets, which are the mainstay of the Indian Air Force, along with the T-90 battle tanks and naval stealth frigates of the Talwar class and the Kriva class. It has also assisted India in the construction of its nuclear powered submarines under the Arihant class, and had even leased a nuclear powered submarine, INS Chakra, which was used by the Indian Navy for training its sailors in operating nuclear powered submarines. Then India's sole aircraft carrier, INS Vikramaditya, has also been procured from Russia, and as a result, Russia has continued to remain the largest supplier of weapons to India. The two countries have further expanded their cooperation into outer space as well, where the Russian space agency Roscosmos actively collaborates with ISRO, and it not only tried to help India with the development of cryogenic engines, but it is also helping India in its first ever manned space flight, that is the Gaganyaan mission. Even in the energy sector, India Russia share very close relations, and Indian companies like OVL or ONGC Videsh Limited have not only gained access to Russian hydrocarbon reserves at the Sakhalin gas fields in the Siberia region of Russia, but Russia has also been helping India in the civilian nuclear domain by aiding the construction of the Kundankulam nuclear power plant in Tamil Nadu. The writer points out that in the defense and military domain, India and Russia no longer share just a buyer seller relationship. Today, the two countries are collaborating with each other and even taking up joint projects and joint ventures. The development of the BrahMos cruise missile is a classic example for this, and it shows Russia's willingness to collaborate with India and even to provide for transfer of technology with regard to key defense equipment. But however, over the last 2 decades, the India Russia relationship has faced a few issues, especially with regard to defense and military relations. As Russia had a near monopoly over the supply of key weapons to India, it was often said that this was a huge disadvantage for India, as several Russian weapons were often considered to be outdated, and quite often questions would also be raised over the quality of Russian weapon platforms. So this led India to look for other defense suppliers. And as it started building strategic relations with US and Israel, these countries started emerging as the key defense suppliers to India. This reduced the Russian share in the Indian defense market, and it led to a lot of displeasure being expressed from Russia. Apart from this divergence over defense sales, a few other divergences also emerged in the strategic partnership. As India became more closely aligned with the United States, its strategic objectives on certain global issues started differing from that of Russia. Then, parallelly, as the US Russia rivalry increased, Russia and China closely aligned together at the global level, which created conflicting choices for India. So, on several key issues like Afghanistan, the conflict in Syria and Libya, and even over India US collaboration in the Indo Pacific, India and Russia started developing a lot of differences. For example, Russia has clearly expressed its displeasure against groupings such as the Quadrilateral, which India and US have championed along with Japan and Australia, as a counter to the rising aggression of China in the Indo Pacific. These divergences in the strategic viewpoints of India and Russia was a result of their changing national interests as a result of changing global geopolitics. But despite these changes and these divergences, the India Russia relationship has remained strong, and India's resolve to remain committed to the S 400 deal clearly illustrates that. Because despite the threat of American sanctions, India has gone ahead with the deal, and Russia has even begun the delivery of the weapon system. Yesterday's annual summit and the beginning of the 2+2 ministerial dialogue also illustrates the point that the India Russia relationship is a time tested relationship, and it has withstood all the divergences and their differences, and has overcome the constant changes in global geopolitics. So the writer says that the time has come for India and Russia to further diversify this important relationship and look beyond defense and energy cooperation. For example, he points out that bilateral trade between the two countries is still way below their potential, and this calls for better connectivity between the two countries, with special focus on boosting exports to each other's countries. This would also require the two countries to further step up their investments to follow up on the current investments that they have already made in each other's key sectors. For example, India has become a key investor in the Far East region of Russia and is a key participant at the Eastern Economic Forum, which is organized by Russia to drive investments into the Far East region. Here, India has made key investments in the hydrocarbon sector, and parallelly, Russia has been stepping up its investments into India as well. But currently, Russian investments are limited to a few sectors, and there is enormous opportunity for the two countries to further diversify this. India would benefit enormously if it could drive Russian investments into clean and renewable energy, especially nuclear power. Then Russia could also look at driving investments in the cybersecurity domain and in science and technology and research and development. Such diversification of economic and trade relations will further deepen the relationship, and the two countries should also focus on the much neglected aspect of the relationship, which is people to people relations. There is tremendous scope for India and Russia to further boost tourism and to promote collaboration in the education sector and as well as with regard to sports. They should also focus on expanding their cultural relations, and India could look at extending its Buddhist diplomacy towards Russia as well. So, according to the writer, such expansion of the India Russia relationship beyond the defense and energy domain will help in further deepening this critical relationship and will help them withstand the changes in geopolitics. Now let's take up an article from page number 15 from the newly introduced text and context section by The Hindu. This article deals with the Digi Yatra scheme and the concerns related to biometrics and facial recognition technology. See, the Ministry of Civil Aviation and the Airports Authority of India are launching an ambitious scheme known as the Digi Yatra scheme. This scheme intends to facilitate paperless air travel by basing identification of passengers at airports on facial recognition technology. Under the project, the idea is to create a paperless boarding system where passengers at airports need not show their physical tickets, boarding passes, or physical ID cards, and instead, through a digital verification of their identity, they can proceed to board the aircrafts, thereby significantly reducing the queues, waiting time, and the processing time. This is set to enable a hassle free travel at Indian airports, and the government is looking to launch this ambitious project next year at small airports such as Varanasi, Pune, and even at the Kolkata and Vijayawada airports. Earlier in 2019, the pilot test for this project was carried out at the Bengaluru and Hyderabad airports. And after the initial success of the pilot rollout, the government was looking to introduce this project across airports in 2019 itself. But the challenges created by the pandemic delayed the rollout of the scheme, and hence, now the Ministry of Civil Aviation and the Airports Authority of India are looking to introduce the scheme next year at these few selected airports. So instead of paper-based identification, this system will make use of biometric-based identification by relying upon facial recognition technology. For implementing this project, a national infrastructure will be put in place, which will help all the concerned stakeholders to create a digital identity of the passenger. Stakeholders such as security agencies like CISF, the airports, the airlines, and of course the Airports Authority of India and the Civil Aviation Ministry will all be a part of this infrastructure, which will facilitate the creation of a digital identity of the passenger. This digital identity will be generated on the basis of facial recognition technology and by matching it with other digital details like Aadhaar, passport, and tickets. So once implemented, the project will definitely facilitate hassle-free paperless travel as claimed by the government and will bring enormous benefits to the passengers. But however, the project has raised a lot of concerns with regard to data privacy and data security. Because this controversy always emerges whenever biometric technology is used. In biometrics, biosignatures, which are unique to a person, such as fingerprints, iris scan, or facial recognition, is used in order to verify the identity of a person. But the usage of this technology has always been controversial because this biometric data is very intimate data, and if it falls into the wrong hands or if it is misused, it not only represents a breach of an individual's privacy, but could also lead to the breach of their data security. But the government has assured that it will put in place a robust data security mechanism to not just secure and protect the national infrastructure, but also to secure and protect the data privacy of the citizens. The government has said that under the Digi Yatra scheme, passengers' data privacy is being given utmost importance, and adequate safety and security measures will be deployed in line with our data privacy and data protection practices. But these assurances by the government has failed to satisfy the critics because India's Personal Data Protection Bill, which is currently being debated in the parliament, has raised a lot of concerns as it is found to be insufficient to protect an individual's data privacy and data security. The Personal Data Protection Bill tabled by the government has deviated significantly from the recommendations of the Justice B. N. Srikrishna Committee. For example, the committee had recommended that the National Data Protection Authority should comprise of those members who have been selected through judicial oversight. But in the bill that has been tabled, this provision has been entirely bypassed and gives the government complete powers to appoint the members as it wants to the Data Protection Authority. The bill has also provided for a lot of exemptions to security agencies and intelligence agencies, thereby allowing them complete access to such private data and personal data. This, according to experts, represents a breach of an individual's right to privacy, which clearly has been recognized as a fundamental right under Article 21 in the landmark K.S. Puttaswamy case. So, concerns related to data privacy and data security is one of the major concerns that has been flagged by the critics with regard to the DigiYatra scheme. The second concern is posed by the merging of biometrics with artificial intelligence, because any such biometric based identification system will make use of AI algorithms to provide for an automated process of recognition and identification. But studies around the world have shown that such AI algorithms driven by biometric data are bound to develop an inherent bias based on the biases that already exist in the society. Because, see, these AI algorithms are smart self learning algorithms. They learn based on the data that is being fed into them. But since our society already has a lot of biases on the lines of race, class, and religion, the data that would be fed into these algorithms would also carry this inherent bias, thereby turning these automated systems into a biased system. That's the reason why implementation of such facial recognition technology and biometric based identification, which are driven by AI algorithms, has always been controversial around the world. Studies in US and other parts of the world have shown that such identification systems driven by AI algorithms and biometric data will eventually develop an inherent bias against blacks, browns, Asians, and Muslims. So, this could not only lead to the violation of their rights and privacy, but it could also be potentially misused by security agencies and intelligence agencies for racial profiling and targeted profiling. So, these are the two major concerns that have been expressed with regard to the implementation of the DigiYatra scheme. And according to experts, the current data protection policies we have and also the proposed data protection bill are grossly insufficient to protect the data privacy and data security of the passengers. Next, we have an editorial on page number 6 and a related article on page number 11, which refers to the deteriorating political situation in Myanmar. Yesterday, a military court run by Myanmar's military junta has convicted Aung San Suu Kyi, who was the state councillor of Myanmar and the leader of the National League for Democracy, which had championed democratic struggle in Myanmar. See, Myanmar has been a military dictatorship from the 1960s all the way up until 2010. Back in the 1980s and 1990s, the National League for Democracy, under the leadership of Aung San Suu Kyi, had sought to fight for democratic reforms, but Myanmar's military junta had crushed such pro democracy movements with force. But following the pressure of Western economic sanctions, Myanmar slowly transitioned into a partial democracy in 2010, and in 2015 it introduced a more full fledged democracy. While this was a welcome move, things have quickly turned upside down since last year. Because after democracy was restored in the country, the NLD had won the elections and had served one entire term. But Myanmar's military felt threatened again by the growing popularity of democratic politics, and it decided to take control back by nullifying last year's elections. Earlier this year, Myanmar's military dismissed the government of Myanmar and completely suspended the results of democratic elections. Following this, popular democratic leaders like Aung San Suu Kyi were arrested on flimsy charges, such as inciting the public with speeches against the military and for breaching COVID-19 laws and restrictions. On these flimsy and largely made up charges, Aung San Suu Kyi has now been convicted and has even been sentenced to a jail term. The editorial points out that this marks the return of Myanmar to military dictatorship, and unfortunately, the United Nations and the US have failed to act in pressurizing Myanmar to uphold democracy in the country. Meanwhile, China has continued its close engagement with Myanmar's military junta and is going ahead to invest billions of dollars in the strategic China Myanmar Economic Corridor project, which is all set to be a part of China's Belt and Road Initiative. India, on the other hand, always adopts a very neutral position on any adverse political development in Myanmar. Because since many decades, India has followed a very realistic foreign policy with regard to Myanmar. Myanmar is a crucial neighbor for India, which shares borders with northeastern states which are affected by insurgency. Considering that these northeast insurgents often find a safe haven in Myanmar, usually with the support of China, it has been crucial for India to have close relations with Myanmar's military. So, even when Myanmar's military has violated human rights in the country, India has often taken a neutral position. And we have seen this happening during the Rohingya crisis, when the Rohingya Muslims were targeted by Myanmar's military. And we have seen India repeating this neutral position even when Myanmar's army returned the country back to military rule earlier this year. While the editorial understands India's concerns with regard to Northeast insurgency and the rising influence of China, it also points out that India's inability to act in such circumstances undermines India's role and position as a regional leader. Now let's look at the mains practice questions. The first question: India Russia relations have withstood the test of time and the ever shifting nature of national interests. In the light of the statement, examine India's expanding engagement with Russia. The second question: what is the Digi Yatra scheme under which facial recognition technology is being implemented? What are the concerns surrounding biometric technology? Kindly write an answer to these questions and post your answers in the answer writing portal, for which the link shall be given in the description box below. So this concludes our discussion for today. Thanks for watching.